Hey y'all, I just beat Fatal Frame 2 Remake, and here's what I think about it as a huge fan of survival horror. In this video, I'll be talking about the story, exploration, combat, progression, and horror. Quick note about spoilers, this video will not feature any major story spoilers, however I will be talking about the setup of the game's plot and referencing a few mid-game events. I will not reveal any major story spoilers whatsoever, so I'm sure that you can watch this video before playing the game. Survival horror is one of my favorite genres of games, so I was really excited going into Fatal Frame 2. I had heard it was the best in the series and even one of the scariest games of all time. Unfortunately, however, while I am very familiar with Resident Evil and Silent Hill, Fatal Frame is something that I'm just getting into. Because of this, I haven't played the original and can't judge this game based on that metric, as everyone else is seemingly doing. What I have done, however, is played the original Fatal Frame in preparation for this video. Going from the first game in the franchise to the most recent actually gave me a really interesting perspective. FF2R technically has all 5 games prior to it to learn and draw from, while still being inherently connected to that original game. That really shines through while playing, as despite an almost 25-year gap between the original and this remake, I can still clearly see where the improvements from the original were made. Because of this, I think FF2R is a really unique remake, not only in what it changes, but what it does not. Looking towards something like the transformative RE2 and 4 remakes, you can see that the devs took liberties while modernizing those games, adding whole entire areas, rewriting dialogue and story bits, and even changing mechanics entirely. If you were, for example, to play the original Resident Evil and then RE2R, you'd get a real whiplash effect. Not just because of the changed camera perspective, but just a different approach to game design. This is really not the case with FF2R, as I think it's a fantastic sequel to the original game, still retaining the same gameplay feel and tone. For example, the story in the 2 games is quite literally almost exactly the same, to the point where you can simplify them to almost the exact same thing. A girl explores a haunted area to look for her sibling, while uncovering details about a failed ritual to seal a hellgate. I think this is a real double-edged sword for the game, as it works directly for and against it. On one hand, this is a really great jumping on point to the series for newcomers, but as a sequel to the original, it feels like just a little more refined version of something that we've already had. That's exactly what I think the intent was with Fatal Frame 2 as a whole, both the original and the remake. Refining the good ideas from the first game while not building on them much. The story is very similar, yet told in a much better way. FF2 has much less cutscenes than the original and is instead focused on more environmental storytelling. You can still find notes around the house, although I'd argue that the environmental storytelling is much better here. Due to the increased playable area, the game is able to show much more of the ritual and what leads up to it rather than just an old creepy house like the original. The remake doesn't seem to change much in the story department. Cutscenes appear to be mostly shot-for-shot recreations as well as the dialogue. The voice acting is, of course, much improved from the original, as game voice acting has improved over the last 25 years. I do find the voice acting here to be a little bit too breathy for me, kind of like that anime style, which I don't personally like. I overall find it to be much better than the original game and a massive improvement. I wish the story here could have done just something to be a little more engaging at least. While it is told much better than the original game, I still think it has a lot of the same issues. Big events don't happen much in the story, and I'd argue they maybe even happen a little less often than they do in Fatal Frame 1. Most of this game is just searching for Mayu while uncovering more and more details about this failed ritual. I would have liked to see Mio more engaged in the events of this ritual rather than just searching for Mayu the whole time. Even the original Fatal Frame had something like this, so I wish FF2 could have taken bigger swings here. I think overall the story is just fine. It's very similar to the original, and because of that, I didn't find it to be nearly as engaging. I kind of was able to piece everything together right away, although I still do have a few lingering questions. What connection do Miyu and Mayu have to this village is one that I'm still a bit confused on. In the end though, I think the story takes a real backseat here, similar to how it does in the original. It's not bad, and it's got a fine enough mystery, with a few cool side stories and characters here and there. It's just clearly not supposed to be the main draw by any means. The gameplay and exploration is more of the main focus, and where FF2 makes real big leaps over the original. Fatal Frame 1 had a huge issue with exploration. The entire game takes place in one mansion over 4 different nights. The issue was, however, that by the end of night 2, or really by night 1 honestly, you've already explored the entire mansion, which meant that for almost the half of the game, you're just going through the same old areas over and over and over again, while maybe seeing 2 to 3 new rooms at most. This leads to a really repetitive and uninteresting experience of walking through the same places a countless number of times. Fatal Frame 2 does a really great job at fixing this issue, as there's not just one, but multiple different houses in this game for the player to explore. Over 9 chapters, you'll explore 3 to 4 big mansion type houses, a whole village, and numerous smaller areas / houses. By increasing the playable space, it helps the game from falling into the same repetitive trap as the first game. Even at the end of the game, I was still finding new areas, notes, and puzzles to solve, keeping me more engaged for a longer period of time. While the remake does seemingly add new areas, especially with the addition of the new side stories, side quests, most of it is from the original, pretty clearly, for better and for worse. I think it's pretty obvious this game retains a lot of the same level design for one reason. While the scope of the game is much increased, you still are forced to go back into old areas multiple times throughout the game. It's much less of an issue here, but for each of the main mansions, you will completely explore them in its introductory chapter and then need to go back in for 5 to 10 minutes later in the game. At the end of the game, for example, you need to go back into 3 of the major areas to collect 3 different items, and it's so quick that I just don't really see the point of it. Stuff like this happens at multiple points in the game, and it just really doesn't feel like it's worthwhile content to me, instead more like padding to make the game longer. What makes this even worse is that each of the different areas in this game feels exactly the same. I understand that this is supposed to be a small village, but because you're exploring multiple different houses, sometimes multiple times, it highlights how similar each area feels. Sure, there's the twin houses, Dollmaker's house, and the big ritual mansion, but each house feels exactly the same to walk through. Just because some rooms in the Dollmaker's house have dolls in them doesn't make it distinct from the rest. I think it would be possible to stick to the game's approach of creating a realistic depiction of this village while also adding distinct areas. For example, there's one point maybe halfway into the game where you go into some caves for 10 to 20 minutes. Why couldn't this have been expanded into a whole area? I think this remake should have taken things like this from the original and expanded them greatly to create a better game, similar to the RE2 or 4 remakes. The puzzles in this game are another example of a major improvement from the original Fatal Frame that the remake directly lifts from the 2003 version. Puzzles in the original Fatal Frame were just downright terrible, mostly consisting of stupid door puzzles. Fatal Frame 2, on the other hand, improves upon this formula by removing all door puzzles and replacing them with more traditional Resident Evil style puzzles. Most of this game will require you to find keys or find items to use to solve a puzzle. It's a real big improvement that also reflects the increased emphasis on exploration found here in Fatal Frame 2. I think this approach to puzzle design really suits this game a lot more, as it encourages the player to actually explore around and look for items rather than just solving a stupid door code over and over and over again. The combat is probably the biggest change from the original game, although this time it's seemingly completely changed from how it was in Fatal Frame 2 2003. The remake takes a whole new approach to the game's combat system, and I think it's largely for the better. In Fatal Frame 1, combat was slow, requiring the player to line up a shot and hold it there for long periods of time in order to charge up a shot, dealing more damage. While this seems like a really great idea as it forces the player to deal with the danger head on, it actually really slows down the combat, which isn't great for a frankly pretty repetitive combat system. Fatal Frame 2 Remake, on the other hand, instead requires the player to get closer to the ghost rather than just staring at it. Instead of charging up to deal more damage, the more dots that are on a ghost's body, the more damage it does. This makes the player get as close as they possibly can to the danger, creating a risk and reward aspect. The closer you are, the more dots you can line up, and the more damage you can deal, while also having a greater risk of being hit. I think it's a really great change, and it makes combat a lot more tense, as well as increasing player agency. The camera also has 4 different filters that you can select. However, I only use the first one in combat the entire game. Each filter has different strengths and weaknesses, such as increased willpower regeneration, reload speed, and damage. I just never really found much use from switching off the first filter, which has the most damage to start with. As long as you're able to comfortably hit fatal frames, you should be able to get through the game using just the first filter. What I do really like about the filter system, however, is that it has a use beyond combat. Each filter besides the standard one has a use other than killing ghosts. Following invisible tracks, opening sealed doors, and revealing hidden items are all features of the filters, and I think this is a great idea. By giving each filter a use outside of combat, it not only gives each filter a reason for being there, but also increases the amount of puzzle elements in the game. Since the standard filter is the only one without a separate use, however, I am a little confused as to why these other filters were given the option to be used in combat and upgraded. The standard filter is clearly the intended combat filter. I think it would have been a little more interesting if you could upgrade the standard filter into what the other 3 filters were. For example, choosing to focus on increased willpower regeneration rather than damage. I think this would retain player choice on how they want to approach combat, while also getting rid of the annoyance of accidentally doing a fight with the wrong filter. So yeah, I actually think this remake adds a lot to the combat systems from the first 2 games, as it directly fixes a major problem of the original, repetitive and boring combat, by adding player agency and diversity with the different filters. Somehow, it still retains the intention behind the combat from the originals, which is making the player face these horrors head on. I'd even argue that it's improved a little because the player needs to actively get closer. All these changes are great and result in a great combat system. Although one tiny thing brings the entire system down, just like the original Fatal Frame: the enemy variety. The original Fatal Frame featured tons of different ghosts, although besides a few bosses, you'd always deal with them the exact same way. Wait for your symbols to charge up, and then wait for the Fatal Frame indicator and repeat until the ghost is dead. Sure, there's a few boss fights here and there, which are essentially just tankier ghosts. It got so boring by the end of the game because it was just the same exact thing over and over and over. Unfortunately, Fatal Frame 2 falls into this same trap. I'd maybe argue it's even worse than Fatal Frame 2 because besides the Kusabi, I cannot name you a single boss from this game. Literally every single enemy in this game feels the exact same to fight. Sure, some run at you or have some kind of grab attack, but it really does boil down to just getting as close to the ghost as you possibly can and waiting for a fatal frame. I think this game, at the very least, needed interesting bosses akin to Resident Evil to change things up from time to time. Like, in Resident Evil, you get multiple different guns and ammo types. Each gun/ammo type works best for a specific enemy, meaning that you're pretty constantly switching between them. You save your best guns and ammo for the bosses, use shotguns on the harder enemies like lickers, SMGs or grenades on groups, and normal pistol ammo for generic zombies. While this game does have many different ammo types and filters, you don't have any reason to use anything but the normal ones for each. Like I said earlier, I used the standard filter for the whole game as well as the Type 14 film because I was just saving up my best stuff for bosses. Since this game is at the very least doesn't have any recognizable bosses, if not having none like I said earlier, then I just never got to be able to use all that saved up ammo and just use the Type 14 the whole game. Fatal Frame 2 needs more enemy types beyond giving them a lunge or spear or something to at least give me a reason to use all my different ammo types rather than just saving them the whole game. I do want to quickly talk about this game's difficulty as that was a huge issue in the first Fatal Frame as well. I would say that the difficulty in this game is over-exaggerated, at least after the patch directly addressing it was put out, which I played the entire game on. Towards the end of the first Fatal Frame, ghosts would take about half your health away per hit. However, here in Fatal Frame 2, I only got below half health like once or twice and did not die a single time. I do think that some people may be having issues with this game's combat as they aren't very familiar with it as I may be, having played the first game and all. It's honestly just a lot more balanced than Fatal Frame 1, and if you could deal with that game, you should be mostly fine here. Over the course of the game, you can collect different prayer beads hidden around the map, which can be used to upgrade your camera in different filters. An upgrade system was found in the first game as well, where you could spend points earned from killing ghosts to upgrade your camera, which are now used to buy items and charms from the shop. I think the progression system in both games is overall pretty good, as they just are simple stat upgrades for the camera, although I do have a few small problems with it here in Fatal Frame 2 Remake. I think a lot of the upgrades here are just not very useful to the point where I don't see any reason in getting most of them. There's stuff like the zoom and focus upgrades, which will let you manually adjust them, although I don't see much reason to buy them when the game does it for you. While those two may be a nice option for those who want it, the range upgrade on the other hand seems like a useless stat dump to me. The entire point of the combat system is to get as close to an enemy as you can, so why would I want the ability to hit them from further away? I would just do less damage. I can only think of one enemy in the game where you can't just walk right up to it, so besides that, it's just a really useless upgrade. The filter upgrades kind of fall into this trap too for me. I like how you have the option of picking which filter you want to upgrade and build into, but like I said earlier, I just don't understand why you would use anything other than the first filter in combat. It costs so much to upgrade the other filters to make them comparable damage-wise to the first, so I just don't think it's really worth it to upgrade anything but the standard filter, especially because willpower recovery and reload speed aren't huge issues to begin with. Points can still be collected from killing ghosts, but are now used to instead buy items from the shop. I really think this is a great addition, as while items are much more plentiful than they were in the original game, I still think it's great to be able to buy healing items if necessary. This directly solves the issue of running out of heals from the poor difficulty tuning in the first game. You can also buy charms with these points, but once again, I personally don't see much use in any of them besides the one that gives you more damage to the standard filter. I still think it's a nice option to have though, as once again it lets the player choose how they want to progress through the game. The last thing I want to touch on is how scary this game is. Like I said before, I was going into this game with really high expectations on how scary it would be, and unfortunately I was really let down. I personally did not find this game to be scary at all, although I think some people may, as it does try pretty hard to scare you. The remake specifically makes some big changes in this department that may really get to some people. First off, this remake retains a change made from the Wii remake of this game, where when you go to grab an item or open a door, a ghost will occasionally come out and grab you. You can avoid this by pressing the dodge button before a ghost grabs you, which gets the player invested and tense every time they go to grab something, although it's so rare that I usually didn't find it to be very scary. The biggest change this remake makes, however, is with the Kusabi. The Kusabi is essentially this game's stalker enemy, where at multiple points in the game, he will chase you. You cannot kill him and must hide from him to escape. Once again, I think this is actually a pretty good change, as it changed up the rhythm of gameplay quite a bit, as well as adding some tension while you're being chased. It's especially nerve-wracking when Mayu is with you, as you need to hold her hand and drag her with you to escape, slowing you down even more. I personally didn't find these sections to be very tense or scary after the first encounter, although once again, I think this is a great change that some people will find horrifying. Despite those two changes though, I still think this game falls into the same trap as the first game. Because of the really repetitive combat, enemy, and area design, it loses any tension that is being built throughout the game. I personally wasn't really scared of the ghosts or dying or anything, because I knew if a ghost popped up, all I'd have to do is pull out my camera, wait for a fatal frame, and click. I think future entries need to diversify the game much more than they did here, as while this is a great step in the right direction, it's just not enough to make this game much scarier than the first. Fatal Frame 2 is one of, if not the most celebrated games in this franchise because of how it refined a great idea into a much better game. I think that still shines through with this remake. Despite the first entry and this remake being almost 25 years apart, they still work together in sequence. Playing this remake all the way through, I could still see the bones of the original Fatal Frame 2 and what was improved upon from the original. The refined story, exploration, and puzzles are highlighted with this game, seemingly mostly unchanged from the original Fatal Frame 2. Even some of the new additions with this remake, like the reworked combat, still fit within the series and feels like an evolution of the first game's combat. All this comes together to create a remake that not only works as a remake of the second game, but also as a sequel to the first one. That being said, because this remake is so faithful, it still has a lot of problems. The story is very similar to the original game and lacks that personal connection that the first had by the end. The exploration is much expanded, yet still could have used more diverse areas. The combat is changed for the better, but could still use more enemy variety. Because of all these issues, the game still lacks the horror of something like Resident Evil or Silent Hill. I don't think this game is bad by any means though. I think it's a real improvement over the original and a game that I can easily see myself coming back to in the future. I just think that even being a remake, there's still room for the series to go in future, or I guess past, entries, which some people may like and others may not. Some may be disappointed in how this game is a little clunky in some areas and not as refined as the Resi or SH2 remakes. But for me personally, this remake was just a great way to play the second entry of a series that I'm currently getting into. I cannot wait to play Fatal Frame 3 to see how it expands upon these elements even more. I recommend Fatal Frame 2 Remake. 7 out of 10. Well y'all, that's my review of Fatal Frame 2 Remake. If you liked this video, I'd really appreciate it if you could like, comment, or even subscribe. That's all I got for this review, but I do want to take the last few moments to talk about me and my channel. Alright y'all, so there's two things I want to talk about today. So the first one is just a little story. It is kind of connected to this video and this review. But I said I wasn't scared by this game, and I stand by that, although there was one time I was scared. So I played this entire game on a cruise ship because I was on a cruise over spring break with my family. So my sister and I were sharing a room, and this room was like, there's two beds, and then each bed had a headboard and then wooden bars going up to the ceiling, right? And behind these like headboard and bars was the closet, and then in between the like bars and the closet was this like thin long hallway with a desk at the end. And so that's where like the girls were supposed to do their makeup. So there's like a big mirror there. So I played this game at night while my sister was asleep, pitch black room, and I was pretty much sitting at the end of a really skinny long hallway with a big mirror in front of my face. And this cruise ship was like rocking back and forth, and like I was scared because I could look in this mirror and see behind me just a long pitch black hallway, and I was really scared. So I bring that up because I want to say that, like, while I personally didn't find this game to be scary, I think others will, and it depends on not only like your sensitivity to that stuff, but also where you play the game. I will say this was at the start of the game, so that's also part of why I was scared, but yeah, like, I wanted to say that. So the real thing I want to talk about today, though, is Crimson Desert. So I have made a decision that I didn't want to do, but I want to start off by saying that I always complete games when I start them. So in the past, I don't know, 6 years since I've started like completing my backlog seriously, in the like 500-ish games that I've completed, I have not beat like 5 of them, okay? And that's because I play one game at a time, and I really focus on a game until I beat it and then go on to the next one, so that gives me a reason to beat it, right? I'm not going to do that with Crimson Desert. I am not going to play just Crimson Desert, because if I do that, then future games coming out soon will just get delayed so much that there's no reason to making a video on them. So I'm recording this on Monday. I'm hoping to get this video out on Wednesday. On Thursday of this week, Life is Strange Reunion is coming out. There is no way I can beat Crimson Desert in that amount of time and make a video on it. This is a long game. It took me like 2 to 4 weeks to beat Assassin's Creed Shadows, and this is a comparable experience to that. That's gonna take me forever, and it's gonna push back the Life is Strange video, the Borderlands 4 DLC, the Division mobile game, Starfield DLC, Mouse BI, etc. It's going to push that back so much that it's going to impact the channel, and I just don't think it would be a very good idea to do that. So I do plan on still making a video from Crimson Desert. I have started the game. I beat chapter 1 and that's it. Literally, when I hit end recording on this, I'm going to go get on the game right now, okay? But I'm going to push it back to make other videos first. So when Life is Strange Reunion comes out, I'm going to stop Crimson Desert and play in that, okay? So I just wanted to say that because I don't usually do that, but I think I have to for this. Like, it's something I have to do. So yeah, Crimson Desert review won't be for a while. Like, there's so many new games coming out. And then also, frankly, I'm a busy college student. Like, I also have a job. Like, I work 10 hours a week, and this is my busiest semester ever. I'm taking 17 credit hours. So yeah, I have other things I need to do other than play Crimson Desert. So yeah, but I just wanted to say that, hopefully I can get that out like in a month. I don't know, but yeah. So my next video will be Life is Strange Reunion, probably. But yeah, I'm glad I was finally able to get this review out. Sorry it's so late. Like I said, I went on spring break, so I couldn't really work on this game much, and also I've been busy. But yeah, I'm finally glad I'm getting it out, and yeah, that's all I have to say. So thanks for watching, y'all. Bye!